Oops, and then I went too far. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leola Carter, and I will be your host for today's webinar. I am a SCORE mentor in the Minnesota division, where we have over 90 volunteers serving both Manatee and Sarasota counties. I'm also on the education committee and excited to bring to you today's presentation on the high performance advantage for entrepreneurs. I have been an entrepreneur myself for over 26 years, so interested to see what I can learn today. But before that, a little bit about us here at SCORE. We are a nationwide nonprofit that is an independent part of the Small Business Administration. What can SCORE do for you? We can provide free mentoring services and educational services, such as this webinar, and we can help you in all stages of your business plan, from the first initial thought all the way right up through till whether it's time to sell or close your business. You can find us at score.org/Minnesota, where you can find all of these services, request a mentor, or sign up to be one. And it would not be possible for us to be here today if it weren't for our community partners and sponsors that we have listed here. And now I believe it is time to introduce Candace and Lauren Henry. They are leadership professors, they are sisters, and founders of, and I'm going to try this, RETOs. I'm sorry, you're going to have to remind me how to say that. And here to help us make better decisions in life and in work. So I will stop sharing my screen and take it away.
Okay. All right, let me get this set here. Start sharing our screen. It doesn't
And while you're screen sharing, just let participants know as well, if you do have any questions, if you type them into chat, Candace and Lauren will try to get those answered as they're going along. And if you do anything in Q&A, we'll probably save those a little bit closer to the end. Or if you see that we skipped over you, feel free to put that in Q&A, and that way I can check them off as we go.
All right. Hopefully everyone can see. Okay.
Yeah, looks good from
Perfect.
here.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We are so excited to invest some time with all of you today. We know that getting your ideas off the ground as an entrepreneur or taking your business to the next level, securing deals that you've always dreamed of doing takes hard work. In fact, you can give us a thumbs up in the chat if you agree, if you've been there. And we know the marketplace is a really fast-paced and very competitive environment. And so I think we're all sort of asking, how do I stand out in the crowd? How do I create success? How do I establish myself as an industry leader? And the secret is really in applying the same high performance strategies to your business that have helped athletes, that have helped performers, that have helped high achievers of really all different industries to attain top results.
So go ahead and make sure that you have the note sheet for our session today. That way you'll be able to get the most out of our time together, get a chance to have all those key points in a place where you can refer back to them anytime you need a little refresher, and you'll get a chance to start applying some of the concepts that we're going to be sharing with you right now during the session. So that is available for you. There's a link in the chat. You can also see the link on the screen. You can either type directly onto it digitally. So if you do that, just make sure you hit save at the end so that you save all your notes there, or you can definitely print that out and take your notes that way as well.
So just to give you a little bit of background about us, I'm Candace, this is Lauren. We are sisters and university professors of leadership, as well as the co-founders of Aretios. And our whole goal is to help entrepreneurs and young professionals learn how to lead well and live their best life. And so we bring over a decade of study in leadership and personal growth, as well as 13 years of experience as leadership trainers. And our whole goal as what we say, we get to be success and influence strategists. We help people to really clarify their purpose and to develop their influence. That way they live a life full of success, excitement, and meaning.
So let's begin by talking about what we're going to cover in today's session. Our goal is to share with you three main things that are going to help you be able to do this. Number one, we're going to look at how to make smarter, better decisions in both your life and your work. So it will help you in all areas. Number two, we're going to talk about how to achieve those high performance results, especially when the pressure is on, because that's when it gets to a lot of people. And then number three, we're going to look at how to boost your resilience. So when you encounter those tough situations or setbacks, how do you bounce back and still come back stronger and able to do your very best? So first of all, that begs the question though, what is high performance and how do we attain that? So high performance is really about producing better results, operating at this higher level of standards and being above the norm for an extended period of time. So like Candace said a little bit ago, when you think of high performance, we can see high performers as these standout individuals, whether it's in business, sports, arts, basically any area, we see these people who are excelling. But the thing is, there's a common denominator among all of them, and it's these practices that allow them to rise above their peers and consistently deliver those impressive and outstanding results. And so the good news is that the truth is it's really a matter of strategy. So when you and I put into practice those same strategies in our own life, we can also get those high performance results too.
So let's begin with decision making. An essential part of getting results is an individual's ability to make faster, wiser, and more skillful decisions. And so when we work with clients, many of them are often navigating different transitions, whether that is in work or in their personal lives. And so they're sometimes desiring to make a big change or to operate at a higher level of influence. And so they're usually faced with decisions and usually several options that could maybe potentially create that lifestyle that they want. And so, anyone can make a choice, right? We've all made a variety of choices throughout our lives, but how do we actually ensure that we've chosen the right option? Well, let's take a look at some high performance strategies to help us make this happen. So the first thing that we would advise is to clarify the options. And this means we have to get good at asking questions. And our goal with asking questions is to eliminate assumptions.
And the reason why we want to eliminate assumptions is because that is what can lead us to miscommunication, misunderstanding, and ultimately even potentially destroy relationships, reputations, and of course the outcome as well. So this is really important because an assumption can take place when your perspective of the outcome or the option that you're considering is entirely different than the other person's. And it's so easy for this to happen. So here are a couple phrases that you can kind of add to your repertoire to ensure that you are getting that clarity and eliminating any incongruences between the understanding of when you're trying to make a choice and considering various options. So a simple one that you can use is this what you mean? And share what your understanding is of the option that you're considering when making a choice. You can also invite them to kind of clarify by saying, so if I'm hearing you correctly, or if I understand you properly, I'm thinking it's this. And what that does is it will automatically prompt the other person to either affirm what you said by saying, yes, that's exactly right, that's what I'm talking about, or they'll start to correct and say, no, actually, we're expecting the terms to be this way. And so then you understand, okay, nope, I didn't quite have it exactly right. And that way you avoid any of those assumptions.
Now, I mentioned a minute ago that you want to get really good at asking questions. So here's a couple just to kind of keep in your rotation. The first thing you want to ask questions of is the cost. And you want to make sure that you know what something is going to really require. Because sometimes when an option is particularly exciting, we can look at it through rose-colored glasses, right? And we can kind of gloss over the reality of what something will require. And so if we're considering a potential collaboration or we're looking at a potential investor, make sure that we know what's actually required of us. We want to make sure that we have enough time, we have enough energy for everything that we say yes to, so that way we can deliver that high quality of results that's consistent with our reputation and how we want people to see us. The second thing would be, how committed am I to making this change? Do you really want it now that you know what that cost is? And the third thing would be, does this align with my values? Will that bring me closer to the person that I want to become or to the values that I say really illustrate what my business means to me? If the answer is no, then that option should be automatically off the table. But if it is something, then perhaps it's worth a second look. And the fourth thing is, what are they expecting of me for this opportunity?
So if you're following along on the notes, the first little blank in there was this one: clarify the options to eliminate the assumptions. And the second thing that we want to do is to play the long game. This is going to help us make smarter, better decisions. And that is playing the long game. So we want you to take a look at this quote from Dan Miller. And he says, "You cannot justify success in one area at the expense of success in another." So one of the things that can help us avoid this mistake is by using long-term thinking. So we're going to give you a little tool that we like to refer to as playing the long game. And you can use these 3 questions anytime you're making a very big or important decision. And so the way it works is it helps you to project your goal or the option that you're considering into the future and give you a sense of what that would be like if you were to choose that option. And then you can see, am I happy with that outcome or not so much? So the first thing you're going to look at in playing the long game, and you can fill this in on your notes, is results. So this is talking about the results that it would create for you if you were to make this choice. So 5 years from now, if you said yes to this option, will you be happy with that choice? Or maybe you want to think a little bit closer term, a year from now. And depending on how big the decision is, will it have positioned you for where you want to be? So the first thing is, what kind of results is it going to create? Second thing you want to consider is relationships, the impact that it would have on your relationships, because like it or not, our choices don't operate in a vacuum. So a lot of people get affected by it, your employees, your potential partners in the future because of a choice that you made, or even family and friends. So it's important to think about, what kind of impact is this going to have on my relationships? How will it have impacted those close to you now and 5 years from now? And then the third part of playing the long game is looking at the reality. So what is the new reality that it's going to create for you if you say yes to this option? So imagine that you made this choice. Maybe you're thinking about moving your business to a new place, or even moving yourself to a new city. If you imagine, like you said yes, sometimes that gut response will come up in us of like, oh my gosh, no, I wish I hadn't have done that. Or you say yes and you feel that sense of relief. So that can help you to kind of think about, okay, just imagine that that's it. You decided now. What was that initial response that you had? So for example, if you're planning to decide whether or not to take a specific investment offer, you can run it through this little test here of playing the long game to look at, okay, what kind of results is it going to create? How's it going to impact all the relationships that are at stake here? And then what's the reality that it would create for me? And see if that lines up with what you want the outcome to be.
Okay, so the third strategy that we can use to help us make smarter, better, wiser decisions in life and work is what's called choice versus chance. And this is basically helping us to determine our risk level. So remember, in every situation, there's always an element of chance. Some people might call it luck, others might call it randomness, but it's something that can influence the outcome that we don't necessarily have control over. And so that means that every decision we make is determined by those two things. That's choice, something that you and I can control, and the chance element that we can't necessarily control. So quick example, let's say you decide to go on vacation to a beautiful place. Let's say we're going to Bora Bora in French Polynesia. So we chose a beautiful spot, right? That we can control. But we can't necessarily control the weather, right? We can do whatever we can to choose a good time to be there, but we don't have specific control over that. That is up to chance. So in decisions where your outcome is more heavily influenced by the choice that's within your control and chance is only a small factor, well then of course we can take on a higher level of risk because we know that we're going to make the right choice. However, in a situation where maybe the outcome is highly determined by chance, by factors that are outside of your control, then regardless of whatever choice you make, you may not have that final say. Then you probably want to take on a lower level of risk because even if you do make the right choice, you may not be able to influence the outcome.
So when it comes to high performance decision making, we've covered 3 strategies here to help you be more effective. Number 1 was clarifying those options by asking questions to help you eliminate any assumptions. That way you don't sign up for something that wasn't exactly what you were expecting. Especially when it comes to business, there's a lot of nuances and little things that you want to clarify. Number 2, playing the long game to see what kind of future it will create for you in terms of results, relationships, and reality. And then determining your level of risk by evaluating how much choice and chance are playing into those decisions that you're considering. So we want to take a minute now and think about, for you, what is one choice that you are thinking about that you need to make? And which one of those 3 strategies do you want to focus on first to help you make that choice? So you'll see a little spot on the notes that say, let's apply it. And there's some lines under there. Is there a choice that you've been needing to make? Write down that one decision that what is that element or that issue or whatever that topic is, and then make a note of which one of these 3 you want to use first to help you start to process the best option.
We'll give you a minute to do that. Maybe you want to clarify the options, asking questions, play the long game. What's that going to look like? Or maybe you need to determine your level of risk.
So I typed into the chat box that what I want to do is retire. So now I'll fill out the rest of my my
Yeah,
plan.
Perfect.
yeah.
I love it.
You can give us a thumbs up when you've got yours noted down somewhere.
Okay. So one of the biggest challenges, now that we have figured out our decision-making strategy, that stops people from achieving their dreams or achieving their desired results or even the next level of success is their ability to deliver consistent results when they're under pressure. And there's a really interesting quote that comes from 2 people, A. Mark Williams and Tim Wigmore, and they do a lot of study and work with high performance athletics. And they say that the very best athletes manage to channel the anxiety that they feel positively, especially if they have high self-confidence. And they say that athletes who have low self-confidence view anxiety as detrimental to their performance. But those who have that high level of self-confidence, they actually perceive anxiety as a sign of being ready for the challenges ahead. And that makes them less likely to choke under pressure. I think that's so fascinating because we can see how this functions in the realm of athletics, right? We can see that, let's say we're watching the Olympics, you can see which athletes are able to sustain those incredible results, even when they're on the world stage, and others sometimes kind of have those hit or miss inconsistent results. But did you know that's true of you too? Whether we're performing on a field or a stage or in front of clients or in a boardroom, the way that you and I respond to pressure determines whether we sink or succeed in those moments that actually matter the most. And so we want to give you some high performance techniques to make sure that you thrive. You're one of those who can deliver consistently when the pressure is on.
So this actually all begins with your level of self-confidence, just like you heard in that quote that Candace shared. So it's important for us to first kind of address as our foundation is our self-confidence. And a lot of that deals with overcoming imposter syndrome. So first of all, we have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe that we are capable. Let us know in the chat if you've ever heard of imposter syndrome or encountered imposter syndrome before, you've dealt with it yourself. It's basically the fear that you won't live up to either others' expectations of you or maybe your own expectations of you, or you feel that you're not good enough and you won't live up to your reputation and that people would find out that you're just not what they thought you were. It's a very common thing that a lot of people experience. And so it's important for us to be able to build the proper self-confidence. That way, when we're in those situations, we can turn that pressure into power to propel us forward. So at the root of imposter syndrome is actually low self-esteem. So in order to overcome this roadblock, we have to build up our self-esteem. And so we're going to give you a few really practical ways to do that. The first one is to know your strengths. Obviously, when you're in an area, operating in an area where you feel confident, you know you're good at it, automatically you feel a lot better and you're able to perform with greater skill. So when you know your strengths, then you can move to number two, which is working on honing them. A lot of people will just focus on shoring up their weaknesses, which there's definitely value there as well, but you don't want to neglect to develop your strengths as well, because that's going to give you even greater ability in those areas. If you think about a kid who is maybe in kindergarten and has some natural artistic ability. So maybe his little stick figure lion is better than everybody else's in the class, right? He's got some natural ability there. But if he doesn't do anything to work on that skill by the time he's 18, compared to somebody else who was consistently practicing in their artistic skills, he's not going to have the same level of ability. So all of us have natural talents that we have in the raw, or skills that could be really developed. We have to make sure that we work on growing them as well. That way we polish and put in the work to really have something that we can truly be confident in, and we can also know that we can deliver. We have to be able to bet on ourselves, which is the third one. We have to be able to see ourselves as someone that you would trust. You would hire you. You would say, yes, I want them to go present in front of the client. But if you don't believe in yourself, people will automatically pick up on that, and they will start to be hesitant about whether or not they would want to work with you as well. So something that can be really helpful in building that ability to be able to bet on yourself and that confidence is affirmations. We use them ourselves, we use them with our clients, our students, and it's really helpful to start to build in and program into your mind those positive beliefs of confidence about who you are as a person. Because a lot of us have accumulated these negative beliefs over time. So if that's something that you are not familiar with, we have a free template that you're happy to use. There's a link to it there to help you to start to build in those right kind of beliefs about who you are as a person, to build that self-confidence. So just print it out, put it somewhere in your office or somewhere you're going to see it, to be able to start to build those positive beliefs about yourself. And then if you need a reminder for, if you've had a low moment, or reminding yourself that you're good, keep a track record of your wins. Just a note in your phone, or a little sticky note that you have maybe in your wallet, or somewhere that you can see it. So when you have one of those rough days and you're doubting yourself, or that imposter syndrome starts to creep in, go back and be like, you know what? I did excel. I was really good here and I delivered there, and I can do this. So that little track record can be a helpful reminder when you hit one of those moments where you need a little boost.
And that's very normal and natural, especially as entrepreneurs, because there are so many highs and lows, and you're doing so many different aspects of the business. So I think that track record can be especially important, because we can sometimes forget about those things and move on, and suddenly we face a challenge and we're like, oh no, I don't know if I can do this, or I'm not good enough. And we're like, okay, yes, I have done these things. I have performed well. So now that you know that you are capable of delivering, and you believe you're capable of delivering, what do you do when the nerves get to you? Because they will from time to time. The first thing we can do, and you'll see it here on the screen, is to see it as a challenge. And that's sort of what we saw from that insight from those athletic performance examples. They saw this as a challenge to show what they're capable of. And you and I can do the same thing. Remember, you have earned the right to be in a high stakes situation like this. It's not a threat, it's an opportunity. And when you choose that perspective shift, it totally changes the way that you show up and the way that you interact with other people. The second thing you can do is to employ one of the key practices that top athletes use all the time, and it's called selective attention. So the way it works is, sort of think of a camera lens. So if you're taking a picture of somebody with your phone, you'll see this happening all the time. So you put your subject in the middle, and suddenly it starts to kind of blur out everything else aside from that one thing that it's focusing on. And our brains function this way too. So instead of setting your focus on all the different things that could go wrong, or different past mistakes that you've made, choose the one thing that you're focusing on. What is the one thing, the one part of the process that's at hand right now? So for an athlete, let's say they are a golfer. So in that moment, they can focus on the two main mechanics of their golf swing. They're not going to think about what happened on the last hole. They're not going to think about what happened last week at a different tournament. They're focusing on what is within my control right now. So for you and I, as business owners or entrepreneurs, you could think of, okay, pressure's on. I'm having to present to potential investors. I'm going to think about what's within my control, that opening line of my pitch, or how I want to make eye contact with the people who are sitting at the table, right? That's something that I can focus on, and I can make sure that I know exactly what to do in this moment. We have to also compartmentalize sometimes things that have already happened. And when we focus on the past, it takes away from what's happening in the present, and it keeps us from being able to show up as the best version of ourselves. So remember what you came to do, block out all the distractions, block out the noise. What's that one thing? What's that refocus on your purpose that you need to do in that moment? If something didn't go as planned, it's okay. You can think about that later, but what is most important in this moment right now? And this having that sense of purpose, having that refocusing will actually help you to get your focus off the nerves and on the most important thing in that moment.
The next thing that can help us to perform well under pressure is tapping into a mind body connection. So, first thing you want to think about is your posture. Studies show us that actually our posture taking a confident posture can literally impact our physicality and infuse us with confidence. So a lot of people aren't aware of what's happening with their posture and they can have more of a closed in posture. And number one, that's going to communicate to other people that you don't seem confident. So they're going to perceive that and start treating you in that same way. Whereas if you come in with a confident posture and you take that confident stance, people will automatically see that and then start to respond accordingly. So we want to think about shoulders back and down, chest lifted, and ready to take on the world. And that will help you to have that confidence and that sense of ability. Even if the pressure's on, shoulders back, release tension. We can build it up in our body, and then that can make us not able to flow as easily in things that are normal to us. So you want to take a breath. That's a really important one. A lot of athletes use this. There's a guy named Dr. Saul Miller, who's a sports psychologist, and he's worked with a lot of athletes as well as business people and people in all different fields. And one of the things that he really focuses on is breath work, because it can really help to tap into, okay, what's happening in my mind, and then connect your body to that. So he says, he's quoted as saying, breathing is fundamental to feeling inspired and it being in control and experiencing high level performance. So a lot of times when we are tense, our breathing gets shallow and it gets short. So we want to make sure that you take a breath, and you can think about that as your reset. So when you're experiencing pressure, or maybe getting to a point where you're like maybe not taking any action at all, feeling a little like analysis paralysis or any of those things, to get the mind and body back into sync, you can just take a breath, or maybe you need three, depending on how you're feeling. But you can link that again with some affirmation phrases as well. So you can think of breathing in, I can handle this, breathing out, I'm the master of my reactions and my emotions, something like that. Those are ones that people use. A lot of people in sports use this as well. There's a guy named Leroy Irvin, who is a former NFL cornerback, and he used to credit this as one of the big things that helped him to handle those moments when there's thousands of people yelling and screaming, there's money on the line and millions more watching on TV. And what he said is he would use the phrases of, I'm in charge, when he'd breathe in, and then breathe out, the force is with me. And that helped him to be able to handle all of the pressure, to keep loose, have that competitive edge. And it definitely worked. He became a defensive standout and an NFL All-Pro. So it's a simple strategy. Sometimes we discount something that seems like, oh, well, it's just breathing. That's not going to do anything. But it can really help you in those moments when your mind is like spiraling out of control. What if they say this? What about that? They look like they're judging me, or I don't know if they're going to trust me, etc. And you can just breathe in and breathe out and recenter. Okay, what do I need to do or be in this moment? And redirect your attention to that specific thought.
It's often the simple things that make the biggest difference. Okay, so we've talked about how to make better decisions and what you can do to still bring your best in those high pressure moments. But what about when you've had a difficult or challenging situation? How do we bounce back from that and not let those challenges or those bumps along the way really rattle us? And it really comes down to the word resilience. And so we want to give you what we call your game plan. And we want to help you boost your resilience by training you in advance, and then what to do when you're in the moment facing a tough circumstance or a setback, and then how to recover post-event. So if you're thinking athletics, this is sort of your training plan, what to do when you're in play, and then how to recover from it. So let's start with your first training plan. So in this section of our resilience game plan, we want to build your resilience muscle. And this really starts with overcoming the fear of rejection. And this is one of the biggest things that we see all the time with our clients. We've seen it in our own lives. I think all of us as humans have that natural aversion to being shut down. And so the best way that we can do this is to start small. Just like you would in the gym, you're not going to start by lifting 100-pound weights on your first day. You're going to start by building that muscle. So the same thing is true for us in terms of overcoming that fear of rejection. A simple way to do it is to put yourself in a situation where there is the possibility of rejection, but it's a low stakes environment. So let's say you ask for an upgrade for your flight, or you ask for a different table at the restaurant, or you ask somebody to help you, or you ask for a discount for something. These are all super simple things that maybe if you don't get that window table at the restaurant, it's not the end of the world, right? And so what you're teaching yourself and your brain is, hey, if I get rejected, I can handle it. That's not the end of the world. And so we're building that resilience muscle that helps us to better respond when we do experience rejection, because it's going to happen, but our response will determine how we move forward from that.
And like Candace said, a lot of people, if we succumb to this and we don't overcome this fear of rejection, a lot of people will not even take the opportunity. They won't even ask because they don't want to hear the word no.
Yeah.
So we don't want to just automatically give ourselves a no by not even taking the chance of the opportunity. You have a 0% chance if you don't even try. You get a 50% chance if you do try. So we have to get out of our own way and start to build that ability to overcome that. The second thing that can help us to build our resilience ahead of time is to learn something new. Learning a new skill is one of the best things that will build not only your ability to be resilient, but also your empathy towards other people, because you learn to be more comfortable with the fact that you might look silly sometimes. You might not know what to do. You're going to make mistakes, and that is part of the development process, and it's okay. So that will help you to build that up. And I would encourage you to maybe even do it in something that's outside of your business. You could definitely do it for something that's in your business, but maybe there's a hobby you've been meaning to take up, or you want to learn a new language, or you want to try something else. Doing that will help you to build that ability to pick yourself back up and be resilient and do it again. So
We just started learning golf last year, and it has been this experience exactly.
yes, so highly recommend. All right, the next thing, the third thing here, that's kind of like your pre-game strategy, is to align your time and schedule to operate and respond from a high energy state. So a lot of times when we are facing something that's going to require us to be resilient, it's going to take more energy from us, and it causes us to have to work a little harder to respond as the best version of ourselves. So what we want to do here is aim to schedule as much as you can. Of course, there's certain things that are out of your control. But when it is within your control, you want to try to align any super challenging tasks, a hard call, an important meeting, things like that at a time when you have more energy, you have clearer focus. So maybe don't do it at the end of the day. I mean, Candace and I experience this ourselves of like, there's certain things that it's better for us to do in the morning when we are clear-headed and we can work through it a lot better. If you think about somebody who's hungry and you try to like work with them on something and they're being hangry, it just doesn't go over as well. They don't respond as, open to suggestions or different things because there's something else that's taking precedence in their mind. So same thing for us. If we've already been worn down or stressed out from something else, we want to instead not use that time to try and do something that's going to demand more from us, so we can show up as a better version of ourselves and be more resilient, if possible, to schedule those things at a time when you know you're fresher and you can respond in a better way.
Okay, so those are all of our training strategies. That's
Pre-game.
all pre-game to help us build the muscle there. Now let's move on to the second phase of this game plan, and that's what to do in the moment. So these are our in-play strategies, if you will. So the first thing that can happen when we are experiencing a challenging circumstance, or we are in the moment and things are not going as planned, we need to learn how to respond with resilience. And the first thing is called intercepting the loop. So I don't know if you've experienced before, but I've certainly had this happen to me where something doesn't go right. And what happens is your mind focuses on that and then it replays it over and over and over again. And you're like, oh man, like I should have said this, I should have responded this way. What if this had happened? And as much as you want to go in a new direction, what ends up happening is your mind is just looping round and around and around, focusing on this one thing. And so in order for us to be able to move forward successfully and to have that resilience, to be able to keep pursuing that goal or to be able to respond in the best way when things don't go as we had wished, we have to intercept that loop. And so here's a few ways that you can do that. The first thing would be asking a question. So sort of similar to that first activity that we talked about in making better decisions, asking questions helps us to focus on something new. And so you can use something like, will this matter in a month? Will this matter in a year, 5 years, whatever that is, just to get your mind thinking, hey, wait a minute, is this the right perspective that I need to have on this situation? Another strategy would be to use a replacement statement. And there are many different ones, as many people as there are in the world. Pick something that works for you. We've had clients use all different things, something like the best is yet to come, or I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, or I am strong, I am capable, I am dependable. Choose something that is meaningful to you, that can kind of recenter your thoughts on something that is taking you in the right direction, that allows you to focus on who you're becoming, who you want to be, how you want to show up, instead of focusing on the mistakes over and over, because now that's in the past and we can't change it, but we can choose how we're going to impact our future. And the third thing is to actually take your energy somewhere else and invest it in a different activity. Sometimes we actually have to do something completely different in order to get our mind to focus on something else. And so that could mean that maybe we don't continue focusing on whatever that business element is, or we don't continue reviewing that client experience until we can come back feeling a little bit more refreshed and, sort of like Lauren was talking about, more energized and more resilient. So sometimes we need to actually just start doing something else, and that allows us to refocus, recenter, and then we can come back as the best version of ourselves.
So continuing with our next way to, in the moment, still be resilient. First, if you're having the loop, like Candace said, you got to intercept the loop. The second one is to regain control. So it's a harsh reality, but it is important for us to all realize that the extent to which we allow something to affect us or to irritate us or to bother us is our choice. So sometimes we want to blame it on other people and be like, well, I can't believe they did that and that ruined my day. Well, that's our choice to allow them or their action or their choice to ruin our day or to cause us to, have a bad performance after for in front of, clients or things like that. So we have to remember that we're in control. And once we realize that, that's actually rather empowering, because people can do whatever they're going to do, but it's our choice whether or not we're going to let it affect us. So there's a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that says this so well. She says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." So another thing that we can do in the moment is, if you've had a challenging situation and you're still in the middle of running this meeting and somebody maybe just objected to something that was really important to you, what are you going to do? You can't just, throw it all away right there. So again, you want to ask yourself, who's in control right now? Make sure that the answer is you and not somebody else. And then the third thing that you can do in the moment to still be resilient is to take an observer view. So I want you to imagine for a second the Macy's Day Parade, and that you're right there on the sidelines. Okay, so that's one perspective, that you could be standing there, you're seeing all the people come by, the floats, the Rockettes, and they're performing, and there's all these people and things happening right in front of you. But then imagine that you see it from a different perspective. Now we're up in the penthouse. We're looking down, we see the whole thing, you see what's performing right now, you saw what just happened, you saw what's coming ahead, and you have a totally different perspective. Now you can see, oh, the Rockettes were actually making some cool formation there, instead of just people coming back and forth in front of you. You have an entirely different viewpoint. So sometimes you and I have to take that observer view, step back as if you were somebody just looking at the situation, instead of seeing it through the lens of your own bias of, well, I invested all this time and I've been planning and expecting and hoping and all those things. That can cloud our viewpoint. So in the moment, when you have to be able to still pick yourself up and move forward and still continue to be successful, zoom out for a second and be like, okay, wait a minute. If somebody else was looking at this, no attachment, what would they say? What would they see? What would they advise?
So now that we've looked at our in-play strategies, let's move on to our final component of our resilience game plan. And this is the debrief section. So at this stage, the first thing we want to do is actually do a little bit of self-reflection. And many times we just move from one activity to the next, and we don't really take time to go back and think about what happened and how we can improve and the lessons that can be gained from that. And so this is a really valuable practice that if you're not already using both in your work life and your personal life, we would highly encourage you to do that. And so just evaluate your actions. How did you respond? What did you do well? That's just as important as looking at what you'd like to change. Oftentimes, we're very quick to jump on the things that we want to change, but it's also worth mentioning the things that you have done well. Did you remain positive in a challenging situation? Or did you say something that allowed you to maintain emotional control, right? Those are all valuable things. Sometimes we can do this right after something happens, but other times we might need to take a break and come back to it at a later point in time when our emotions have settled, things have cooled off a little bit, and we have a better mindset to be able to actually practice healthy reflection instead of turning it into a self-sabotage event. So be honest with yourself when it comes to the timing of that. Sometimes we're able to do it right away, and that's wonderful. And other times we might need to step away from that challenging circumstance and say, you know what, I'll come back to this when I'm a little more level-headed, and then be able to gain some real wisdom from how I handled that situation.
The next thing you want to do in this post-event stage of the debrief is to make sure that you remember to learn the lessons and then let it go. If you continue to hold on to that thing, that event, or whatever happened that wasn't how you hoped it would be, then that's going to just drag you down. And like we talked about before, it's going to just take away your focus and energy that could be in what you're doing right now and what that situation needs from you most. So don't allow something that happened in the past to keep you from moving forward. The next thing is to talk with a mentor. That can be really helpful in gaining feedback from a coach or an advisor or somebody who can give you that different perspective, and maybe even point out some areas where you could improve that you hadn't thought of. And so that's where somebody like a score mentor can actually be a really wonderful advantage for all of us as entrepreneurs, to be that listening ear, somebody who is a couple steps ahead of you and has been there before and can really offer some valuable experience. So that could be another thing to help us kind of see it from another angle, another viewpoint, and really make sure that we're going to move forward stronger and better after this situation. And then the last one here is to make sure that you have rest, recovery, and boundaries. So Candace and I have a couple friends who used to be a part of Team USA. And so we went out to the Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center, and we watched them train and saw all the facilities. And one of the things that really struck us was that they prioritized recovery in the same intensity that they did their training. So they would recover just as hard as they would train for their events. And so they would have a training session and then they would have a recovery session. And it was like, everything's off. We're doing just like, plugged in all the stuff that would circulate everything and like ice and all this. And it was super serious. And so for us as entrepreneurs and people who want to have those high performance results, we have to remember that you can't expect high performance quality if you're not taking care of your body to keep it at that peak performance condition. So maybe you need to build in some boundaries. Maybe you need to make sure that you're taking weekends or nights off. As entrepreneurs, we don't have that same kind of structured schedule per se all the time. And so it can be easy for these tasks and topics to just consume your thoughts, energy, and attention at all hours, all the time. And so maybe you need to start putting in a more structured boundary to make sure that you have that moment and space and time to rest, recover, and recharge. Another thing to think about here is to revisit the fundamentals. Oftentimes, when you're in a pressurized situation, those are the first things to go. So check in with yourself periodically and make sure you're getting enough sleep, you're moving your body, you're nourishing your body, and that you're practicing some healthy daily routines to keep yourself in that peak performance. You would never expect somebody who had been, like, say Candace and I went to a horse jumping event the other day. You wouldn't expect a horse that hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, hadn't been training, hadn't doing all, been like just been going to perform well. So we have to think about ourselves in the same way, is we have to keep ourselves in that peak condition if we want those top results. And the final thing that can help in this area is to make time for something fun, to have other things that allow you to completely disconnect, so that you can really just let go, do something else fun, and then it recharges you and you actually come back with an increased motivation to work on your business or your goals or your dreams. But you have to have those opportunities to really just disconnect and do something else and give your mind, your body, and your brain a break from all of that.
You might even get some of your most creative ideas when you're doing something totally
Completely unrelated. Yeah.
Okay, so now that you have kind of seen the complete picture here of our resilience game plan, I want you to look at your notes and think about which part you need to focus on. In fact, you can go ahead and circle it on your notes, star it, make a note that this is the section. Maybe it's the training, maybe it's the in-play strategy, or maybe the debrief afterwards. And then once you've chosen which part for second or third you want to focus on, I want you to put a star next to the strategy that you want to apply first. So, for example, if you're like, hey, I really need to debrief. And so for me, that means I need to maybe build in some more boundaries. Maybe I've been allowing my work to kind of creep into my entire schedule all the time. And I'm realizing that in order for me to operate at that peak performance level, I need to put in some more structure that allows me to actually disconnect. So take a minute and think about what part of the strategy you want to focus on and which strategy in that area do you want to choose to focus on first.
Give us a thumbs up when you've made a note of if you want to focus on the before, during, or the after, and pinpointed something there that you're like, "Ooh, I need to work on that one," or "Oh, that would really help me." All right.
Love it. Okay, so to recap, we covered some strategies today to help you make better, wiser decisions in both life and work. Those strategies work for every aspect of your life there. We talked about how to achieve those high performance results when the pressure is on, and we gave you some strategies to help you build and boost your resilience. And that really gives us all the ability to bounce back from challenging situations.
We talked a little bit about reflection, so we want to close this up with a little reflection here. You'll see 3, 2, 1 on the bottom of your note sheet, or you can jot it down somewhere. And the first thing we want you to do is to think about what were the 3 things that stood out to you most from this session today. Out of this whole topic, what really caught your attention and was most poignant for you? And make a note of those things somewhere, either on your note sheet or wherever you're taking notes. And then you'll see a number 2, and that's where we want you to think about your action steps. So not only do we want you to remember those key points, but what do you want to do? What do you want to start applying? What are the 2 things that you want to make sure that you do after finishing this training? And then the last thing there is one question you still have, and feel free to put any questions in the chat for us, and we'd be happy to answer those for you as well.
All right. Is that my cue to take back over on my few
Sure.
slides when we have a Q&A? So like they mentioned, if you have any questions, you can put anything into either the Q&A or into the chat box. And I will, let's see, find my closing slides.
And our contact information is there on the screen, as well as also on your notes if you have any other questions that you think of later, or if we can be of help to you in any way, we'd be happy to do that. We also have, if you're interested in getting more content from us, we have a monthly newsletter that sends out just free tips on leadership and insights on personal growth. So that's available as well if you just head to our website there.
Yeah, not sure why when I click on something, I have to scroll through all of them. So don't mind me while I'm flipping through here.
There you go.
All right. And just a reminder that you can find us at score.org/Minnesota. And if you do have any questions, you can type those into the Q&A or chat box. And all participants will receive a copy of the slides and the video presentation in their email. And I do see there's something in Q&A.
Okay, so what to do when you are doing well, you aren't doing well dealing with a difficult employee. Somebody.
I think, well, if you aren't doing well dealing with a difficult employee, I think the first thing is to understand that, first of all, we're all human. And so, don't beat yourself up over a situation if you didn't respond the way that you wanted to, but you do have the option to choose how you want to respond in the future. And I would also mention that we always want to find out what motivates people. I think that's the biggest thing. Sometimes when we respond to others, we are responding from what we think is most beneficial. And it's really valuable to come from a place of empathy and find out how they are experiencing a situation. Now, I don't have all the details of this, so it's hard to say specifically what you should do in regards to that situation. But the best thing that we've seen is to not beat yourself up if you don't respond in the way that you had hoped, but do make a choice to choose to change that in the future. And now you have several strategies to do that. And then from the other side, you want to always think about, okay, if I were in their position, what would I want to have in that situation? Like, what would be the best possible solution for me if I was coming from their point of view? And find out, sometimes that takes asking questions to figure out what they are really interested in, what motivates them, and maybe that might explain some of their behavior.
Also, if you have the opportunity to talk with somebody like a score mentor who is an outside party, they might be able to offer some perspective on, wait a minute, you're interpreting the situation this way, but it actually seems like maybe the employee is dealing with this. Now, in case you meant it the other way of, if you are doing well dealing with a difficult employee, I would say do a little debrief yourself. If you find, or maybe you were having a challenge and you find something's working, make sure you kind of debrief yourself and go through, okay, wait, what did I do that worked? What caused them to respond well, so that you can refer back to that and use that again next time you encounter something that is difficult. So you're not just like, oh, phew, it's over, like, but you remember so that you can use it again.
I love both pieces of those advice, but I was thinking of my daughter owns her own company as well, and she maybe had that situation last week. And so I was listening to everything you said. I'm like, oh, good stuff. That was great. And if anybody else does have any questions, you could type those into the Q&A or chat. And we would like to thank everybody for attending our video presentation today. We will send you a survey that will ask you what we can do to improve, or other topics that you may be interested in that you would like to see us do a webinar on. And if we don't have anything else, I'd just like to thank everybody so much for participating today, and have a great afternoon. And that's it.
All right.
Oh, there is
Thank
one
you.
thing, just one thing in chat. Oh, just thank yous in chat. So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you so much, and very nice to meet you.
Yeah, so
Yes,
nice to
thank you
meet
for
you
having us.
too.
All right. We'll see you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.